On this week's John Dulong Show, hey, remember that day in the life thing that I was doing a couple weeks ago that I said I would do on a weekly basis for a couple of weeks? Yeah, we're not doing that again. It's another depressing week here in the world, so we're going to look at things that make me happy. The World Cup and a number of other topics coming up right after the music. Well, hey there. How's it going? Hope that you're having a good week. My name's John Dulong, and I'd like to welcome you to episode number 35 of the John Dulong Show. So glad to have you here with me for another episode of what we now call the Friday Afternoon Fiesta. Hope that you're having a wonderful time here on this Friday. It's supposed to be... I'm not recording this on Friday. You know how this works. I recorded in the past. It's how time works. Supposed to be like a somewhat thundery and lightning-y sort of day here in Halifax. To make way for a what's supposed to be an absolutely beautiful long weekend here in Nova Scotia. Of course, this weekend it is Canada Day this Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. Got some good plans ahead of me. Some good party times, some good party people, and I'm really looking forward to it. Before we get into sort of the gist of why I'm not doing that weekly thing that I do want to get to, I do want to get to that daily sort of blog type take on the day's news thing that I did a couple of weeks ago. I did enjoy that. Before we get to why I decided not to, again, 2 weeks in a row after saying that I was going to try it for a couple of weeks and see how it felt. It felt good. I just haven't. We'll get to it in a second. Before we do, though, just want to talk really quickly, and this is like a genuine thing that I'm asking you, the listener, if you have a take on why this is a thing, why this is a movement, why this is a sort of a way that the world is. I'd love to hear it from you. Don't really care what your positions are in the world. If I disagree with you, I will certainly flatly say it, but please email into johndulongshow@gmail.com if you have a take on this this question that I'm about to ask you right here. Here's sort of the background for the question, though. So you may have heard of this in a primary election ahead of this fall's midterm elections, where they're re-electing broad swaths of the houses in the United States. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I'm sorry for how white I am in how I'm pronouncing that. She unseated Joe Crowley, who was sort of seen as being sort of the insider's pick, one of the front runners to take over sort of the congressional leadership role in the House of Representatives when Nancy Pelosi eventually sort of steps aside. He was seen as a sort of a young up-and-comer, given that he was only in his 50s rather than in his 70s. So she unseated him in a sort of New York congressional district that houses areas like Queens and parts of Brooklyn as well. Alexandria, she sort of represents, I think, a little bit more of what the changing demographics in that area actually sort of look like. She sort of is more representative on sort of a racial sort of standpoint than Crowley is, and that's not to say that Joe Crowley's like a bad guy or anything like that. He was apparently quite I'll be honest, I don't really know. I knew the name, but don't really know his politics. You know what I mean? He was sort of one of those names that I kind of would hear on the news every once in a while as a okay, that's a Democrat, and he's a fairly well respected New York Democrat. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on the other hand, sort of more of Democrat in the Bernie Sanders mold. She worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. She describes herself as a democratic socialist. She's for Medicaid for all. She's for abolishing ICE, which, hey, I'm on board with that. A real shift to the left in terms of what the Democratic sort of conventional wisdom may have been sort of considered to be. Honestly, I see this as a real positive thing. She's somebody who has been a community organizer, so she understands the politics of things. She's obviously very, to get to that level of campaigning and to be able to win, being outspent like 10-1 or something like that. Obviously, you're a connected person. Obviously, you're a person who knows how to organize, and obviously, you're a person who understands the issues and are very passionate about those issues. When you're beating somebody who has sort of incumbency, really, I guess is the big thing to take away from it. But like, not only so she's obviously somebody who's engaged and she's obviously connected, like I said, but she's also like just an average person. Like she's my age, which, very much begs some existential questions about what I'm doing with my life. But she's also like, she was a bartender last year, just a complete political unknown that just stepped in and was, engaged, obviously has strong beliefs, obviously was able to organize people and to inspire people new voters to vote for her, and to treat her as a viable candidate, and has a real shot, I think, at certainly winning the congressional seat and certainly becoming a star player in the Democratic Party for years to come. So before I ask my question here, and again, johndulong@gmail.com, if you have any sort of answer for this, because it's something that's been niggling at the back of my mind for a few days now since I heard the news about this election, okay? Before I ask it, I want to say up front, this might just be my own political biases playing on my own head, okay? I want to acknowledge that before I go on. So when I ask this question, just keep that in mind. I'm certainly more likely to agree with Alexandria than disagree on a number of different topics. Okay, when we hear about the sort of Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party making challenges like this and defeating high-ranking members of the Democratic Party in primary challenges that are coming from the left, and like, not entirely crazily from the left in this case, but certainly coming from the left of Joe Crowley. Why is it that is almost celebrated to a certain extent? Because these are younger candidates who are proposing interesting new ideas, trying to give the party a bit of an identity, trying to give the party a bit of life, certainly standing in firm opposition to the current administration in the White House, as well as the leaderships in both houses of the U.S. Capitol at this point in time. Why is it that that's seen as being kind of like a surprise by all means, and certainly a bit of a shock, but that shock to the system is not necessarily seen as a negative thing in the same way that the Tea Party was, or the sort of MAGA media has been for the Republicans. Now, granted, I think the whole MAGA set, the Donald Trump set, that's a little bit less of an insurgency and a little bit more of a gradual nudging. The Tea Party certainly was a bit of an insurgency, and it was sort of seen, again, this might just be like, the media is liberal or whatever. It might just be, hey, John, you've got some liberal ideals, and you sort of see these people as being an existential threat to the way that that Western liberal democracies in your part of the world tend to operate. But it does sort of feel to me like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Sarah Palin are two sides, or are like kind of the same value on the two different parties, I guess, in a way. Like one is that Tea Party sort of I guess Sarah Palin is not a great example of that. Like Michelle Bachmann, there's the better example. Michelle Bachmann versus Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Jesus, they seem like the same the same value in two different parties. The same side of the coin in two different ideological viewpoints, and the Tea Party just seems to be a boogeyman. I think even for the pundit class that would be in favor of that side getting more power, whereas like the Bernie side of the party, maybe there's a little bit of hand-wringing about whether or not the Democrats can take control of the House, but there always seems, I don't know, it's a weird thing. And like, if you have any sort of thought process on why this is, please email in. I can read your answer on the air. I can just read it to myself regardless. I'm just curious as to what it is, because like it seems to be something. Like I don't mean this like I said, maybe it is just my own political biases coloring this sort of viewpoint that I have. I'm not necessarily seeing this as like a bad or a good thing. It's just something that I'm noticing. And like I said, maybe it's just the way that it's been presented to me based on what I've read and based on how I view the world. But like, I don't know. It's just strange to me that it's an insurgency on the right is seen as is inherently scary, whereas an insurgency on the left is seen as certainly a change. And certainly the question is like, the question seems to be more like, okay, like here, yeah, I'm going to synthesize it like this. The Tea Party seemed to be taking over the Republican Party, and it seemed like there was nothing that they could do. And like, this is just what the Tea Party is. The Tea Party is just going to take over the Republicans. The Democratic Socialist wing of the Democratic Party seems to be like perhaps a threat to them actually having any success. The Tea Party is just like, oh God, we're going to have success, and the Tea Party is going to be driving that success. Are we okay with that? Whereas the Democratic Socialists, it's like these guys are being successful and they're winning seats and all that sort of stuff. Is that a hindrance to us overall? I don't know. If you have a thought on it, johndulong@gmail.com. Please email in. I'd be happy to read your thinking on the matter. I'm realizing it's entirely possible that I said Ottavio instead of Ocasio on a couple of occasions there. I don't know. I'm riled up. I'm riled up here. Congratulations to Miss Ocasio-Cortez. Good piece of news this week, from my perspective anyhow, from where I'm sitting, from the green chair here in John Dulong Show headquarters. I don't know, the rest of the week kind of seemed a little bit like a downer, and like I said, I was going to do the whole day-by-day thing, and try and focus on, like, good news stories, and what that ended up being was, so I watched more of the World Cup. Woo! I know how much you guys love me talking exclusively about one of the things that I love. You guys really liked that around WrestleMania season, I know that. And I just didn't want that to be what the show was again this week. Like, here's the thing. You know, we had the upholding of the travel ban. Let's be real, it's mostly Muslim ban by the Supreme Court. You had Justice Kennedy, who was, ostensibly the only swing vote left on the court, stepping down, and there's a very good chance that another Neil Gorsuch type is going to be there on the Supreme Court in the United States and going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and that's just going to be awful for people I care about who live in the United States. There was, of course, another mass shooting that claimed multiple lives that happened at this time at a newspaper office. I didn't want my whole week to be dominated by that news. I didn't want my whole show to be dominated by that news. It sucks because like I found myself just disconnecting from the news and disconnecting from what's going on in the world around me. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling that I'm becoming a less informed citizen of the world. That's something that I pride myself on being, is being somebody who is well informed about what's going on around